Welcome to Practical by Default, where we focus on juggling kids, career, and homeschool. Being a working mom is hard, and being a homeschool mom is hard, but put them together and it's a special kind of chaos. If you're here, you might be feeling totally overwhelmed with all your responsibilities and desperate for direction and help. My name is Jen McKinnon, author of PracticalByDefault.com and the founder of the Working Homeschool Mom Club on Facebook. I have been working in homeschooling for over 14 years, and while no one ever figures it all out, I'm excited to share realistic, doable tips and tricks to help you organize your priorities, connect with your kids, and bring calm to the chaos. So grab your cup of coffee and get ready to be encouraged. I am so glad you are here. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive into today's topic. How does homeschooling work? Today, I'm going to share with you the answer to that question, along with the 7-step framework to start your journey. So how does homeschooling work? It has been definitely the question of the year. With most public schools closing their doors or moving online, at least temporarily, most parents have asked this question, trying to figure out if homeschooling would work for their families. As a full-time mom who has also worked full-time, I have a unique view of how homeschooling works. I understand that the flexibility and the chaos of teaching your kids at home can be overwhelming. So if you're brand new to teaching your kids at home, I want to encourage you. Take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. Now, let's first figure out, how does homeschooling work? So before we can figure out how it works, we need to actually figure out what it is. And so in a nutshell, homeschooling is teaching your kids at home instead of using a public or even private school system. But from there, the definition of homeschooling can get a little dicey because there are so many different ways to teach your child. Homeschooling allows you to teach your child in a way that suits your child's unique way of learning along with their interests. So for example, I started homeschooling because my son was ahead of his peers in reading and writing. So there was a pretty good chance that my son would not only be bored in the public school system, but he would lose his love of learning since he would be forced to work at grade level. So we started homeschooling for this reason, but we continued because we fell in love with the homeschool lifestyle. So let's talk about some of the benefits of homeschooling. I will be the first to admit that homeschooling isn't perfect for everyone. I mean, obviously, I think it's pretty amazing, or I wouldn't have stuck with it for 14 years. But, we all have bad days. And one of the best benefits of homeschooling is that it isn't written in stone. You aren't locked in forever kind of deal. You can homeschool your child as long as it is meeting the needs of your kids. And if the time comes where you need to reevaluate and think about quitting, that's okay. Inside the article, I have questions that you can ask that will help you to make the best decision for your family, because that's what it's all about, doing what's best for your family. Another great benefit of homeschooling is the academic freedom you have. You get to teach your child exactly where they are in a way that best suits them. It reaches the way they learn, the best materials, the best methods that fit their needs. For example, I've used a variety of ways to teach my children math, from cooking to games to online and offline programs. And as they grew and became more independent, their learning style changed. And therefore, our homeschool had to be able to flex and adjust to their needs. But my absolute favorite benefit to homeschooling is the flexibility. That flexibility is the only way I was able to work and homeschool my kids at the same time. Mostly because unlike public school, which you have your school hours and then you have your homework hours, with homeschooling, you could homeschool anytime. So we used to do homeschool before I went to work, after work, on weekends, on holidays, even on vacation. Because my kids were always learning, we incorporate educational activities no matter where we went. There are tons of benefits to homeschooling. But the question is, how does it work? Now, answering the question, how does homeschooling work, is so difficult because homeschooling looks different for every family. It's like trying to find the perfect pair of jeans. Have you ever noticed how many different colors and shapes and sizes there are? And so, to find the right pair, you need to consider your own size and shape. And then you need to consider, what are you going to be using them for? It's the same as homeschooling. It comes in all shapes and sizes. And when you want to learn something, what do? Well, you might Google it. You might look on YouTube. You might watch a documentary. You might hit up friends and family. You might go to the library for the answer. And every time you learn something new, you are participating in a form of homeschooling. This is why you should never worry if your kids are going to learn everything they need to know, because just like us, our kids are always learning. Instead, you need to realize that your job as the homeschooling parent is to give them the tools they need to learn. When used in homeschooling terms, this type of learning is often labeled child-led. So, interest-led or child-led learning can be a lot of fun because the child is motivated to learn and they're driven to find answers. A desire to learn is matched with a low student to instructor ratio, and this is a recipe for success. However, this type of learning does not work for every child. Some children do better with structure. I know because I have two of them. And this could be because I missed the deschooling process needed to let go of all those pesky public school traditions. Our homeschooling journey started out looking a lot like public school, and it took me years to relax and acknowledge that my kids learned a lot when I wasn't actively teaching them. My children needed a daily checklist to feel like they were learning. So we used a lot of textbooks and workbooks, and then we mixed in online homeschool lessons, life skills, and games to make it more enjoyable. The best part of homeschooling, though, is doing what is right for your child. So let's talk about, how does homeschooling work, the framework. Because while homeschooling has more varieties than there are genes, it does have a basic framework. When you first start homeschooling, the temptation to jump right in and pick the best homeschool curriculum is really hard to resist. After all, that's how homeschooling works, right? You teach your child at home. However, we really want to back on up and build that solid foundation in order for your homeschooling to work for your family. So I'd like to share with you 7 steps that I consider the homeschool framework. Now, as I go through these steps, there will be more information in the article, so you'll definitely want to check that out. So the first step is figure out your why. Why do you want to homeschool? This is the most important question you can ask yourself when it comes to homeschooling, because your why is going to help you weather the storms of homeschooling. There are going to be bad days. There are going to be days where you don't know why you're doing what you're doing and you think you've lost your mind. And it is your why, the reason for homeschooling, that's going to help you out here. Okay. The second step is to find out your state and your province homeschool laws. So your homeschool requirements. You need to check your state or your province, wherever you live, the laws to see what is required along with the homeschool criteria. So there are places you can find it. The HSLDA is a great place to get started. There's one in Canada, there's one for the United States. It's broken down by state requirements. I do want to warn you though, you need to do your own research, because here's what's going to happen. Many well-meaning people, both online, offline, friends and family, they're going to offer their opinions, but they can unintentionally pass along inaccurate information. And I don't want that to happen to you. So look it up yourself and make sure, okay? The third step is deschooling yourself and your children. So this is the step that I missed in my homeschool journey, but it is essential to help you and your children focus on the relationship building and shedding the public school mentality. Now, if you're wondering what this might look like as a working mom, make sure to check out the article, okay? Number 4, decide on the homeschool method and curriculum. Now is when you get to dig into the homeschool methods and curriculums. So homeschool methods are like the styles of homeschooling, such as onschooling, child-led, classical, and then homeschool curriculum includes the tools that you use to teach your child. So this includes things like books and games, online and offline programs, workbooks, textbooks, that type of thing. Number 5 is to create a homeschool schedule. Now, as a working mom, it's really important to know exactly what is on your plate for each day and where it fits in your life. Even if you're using a mostly child-led or an on-school homeschool method, you still need to find the time to check in with your kids. I like using a simple schedule. It just helps me figure out, what homeschool lessons need to be done, what deadlines I have in my work, where I need to be, and when. It helps me keep track of everything because I can't keep it all in my mind. And number 6 is to get support. Homeschooling is a journey that shouldn't be walked alone. It's important to find a community of moms who are on the same journey as you. This is where you will find your encouragement, your inspiration, and your support by swapping stories, and you'll share what's working and what isn't, and you'll get a hand up from those just ahead of you. Thanks to technology, support isn't limited to your local area. You're able to connect with homeschooling families around the world through online groups. And you can find these communities and groups on places such as Facebook, forums, or even offline in your local community. I have 2 communities specifically for working moms who homeschool. So you can find the first one on Facebook. It's the Working Homeschool Mom by Jen McKinnon. That's me. And I also run a smaller paid membership called the Working Homeschool Mom Coffee Club. Which brings us to the 7th and last step. Start homeschooling and then review. So there's never going to be a perfect time to start homeschooling. You'll think of it, okay, I gotta have everything in set and I have to be perfect, and that's not gonna come. So jump in and get started. It's really the only way to find out what's going to work and what isn't. So test the waters, try new things, and be willing to fail. I also recommend reviewing once in a while to figure out what's working and what's not. Because the great thing about homeschooling is that if you find something isn't working, you can change it. You can try something new. So let's review the 7-step framework. Know your why, know your laws, deschool yourself and your kids, pick out your homeschool method and curriculum, plan your homeschool schedule, get support, and then get started. And don't forget to review. So how does homeschooling work? Well, homeschooling is when parents educate their kids at home to meet their children's needs in the best way possible. And homeschooling looks completely different for each family and each child in that family. If you're a working mom who is ready to take advantage of the homeschooling flexibility, I recommend you start with this list. So go ahead and click the link. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a great day. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you found this episode helpful, I'd encourage you to join the Working Homeschool Mom Club on Facebook. It's a free online space for working homeschool moms who are currently looking for encouragement, support, and inspiration to help figure out what your working homeschool mom life might look like.